Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to today's video where I'm going to go over what exactly happened to Loot Goblins and also introduce to one of my most costly mistakes after accidentally leaving 3 passive voices on the ground and starting the next wave of Simulacrum. Now, in this picture here, you can see that there's 11 Divine Orbs on the ground, and 11 Divine Orbs was not even that crazy of an amount last league. People were getting roughly 40, 50, 30 Divine Orbs from one single mob, and that was when PoE pretty much devolved into Diablo Light, where everyone was just looking for this one magical mob, and everyone just named it a Loot Goblin. Now, Loot Goblins kind of still exist in PoE, and I did find one, and I was actually really surprised. I've been pretty much playing all league long, and I think the most Divines I've ever seen from a Loot Goblin was 2 Divines, and that was with the Altar Duplication. Now, there are some once-in-a-lifetime moments that do happen, and that is how you actually find maybe 10 Divines for one mob still. I'm going to go over how that really works. And we're also going to go over the State of Magic find and what exactly GGG did to nerf the Loot Goblins. Now, as I said, I have been doing Magic Find for the first time all league, and it's kind of funny, right? Oh no, someone's trying to ask me a question. Well, I'll answer it after I record the video. But basically, in terms of Sanctum League, the main problem I had with Sanctum League, even though it is an amazing league, is the fact that I was forced to do Sanctum until I got my Relic, and I kind of just gave up on getting a really good Relic, because at this point, I'm just going to stick with this one and hope for the best, right? I could never have gone the Strength Stacking Relic, and I've done like hundreds and hundreds of Sanctums. So I finally decided to start some Magic Finding, and I went back to my favorite map, Crimson Temple. The reason behind doing Crimson Temple is because it works for the Delimir. And during the short journey, I actually misclicked a Divine Altar at the start of a map, but I also found a Loot Goblin. Now, for this Divine Altar, if you can see right here, this is what happened. So I had 2 choices right here. And when you do the Magic Finding in Crimson Temple, you pretty much always choose the player option. The reason behind is that's where you get the quantity and rarity. That's where you get the divination card dupe chance, or the currency dupe chance, or the unique dupe chance. So I never really read the altar, and when you don't read something, and the funny thing is that last map I actually mentioned how sooner or later I was going to accidentally click the wrong thing, and I did get unlucky. Now this is what actually happened right here. So I'm just merely making my way around, and then I clicked the wrong thing, right? And that's all it takes. It takes 1 click to ruin your life. Well, I guess that's like it in real life, right? You bought the wrong thing, and I literally clicked the wrong altar. And if you don't really know, this actually happened at the beginning of the map. So the way you run Crimson Temples, you actually run all the way through. You don't kill any mobs. And this is probably the first altar I got all map. And clicking this altar in the player quant instead of the Divine Orb probably lost me around 30 Divines, pretty much because this map was 67% pack size, so the Eldritch Minions, there will be a lot more of them. And it was a very sad state of affairs. But luckily, 2 maps later, I got redeemed, and I'll go over what exactly happened. So for the State of Magic find, the rarity is a lot worse compared to last league. So for last league, everyone was pretty much trying to spawn as many rares on the map as possible. And the reason behind this is because of the reward conversions that used to happen. So before, there is these reward conversions that dropped items are converted to armor, they're converted to weapons, they're converted to jewelry and jewels. They're also converted to currency based on the rarity of the item. So if you got a unique item, it would be converted into a T0 currency or T1 currency. And I think the T1 currencies are Exalted Orb, Annulment Orbs, and Divine Orbs. So pretty much in Calandra League, everyone was trying to jam as many rares on the map as possible, and that's why people were putting Legion on the map. They were doing Abyss on the map because those league mechanics actually generated the most rares on the map as humanly possible. Now currently, they did add a little change, and this is from the very beginning of the league and from actually Empyrean's video. I'm not really 100% sure if this was ever confirmed. But inside of the data mining of the game files, they found these new handles that said monster dropped items ignore party rarity bonus, and monster dropped items ignore player rarity bonus. So what this means is that if the latter applies to all conversion mods, then player rarity is much less important than before. So that means that when you have the conversion, the items that the monster drops will not have the rarity applied to it. So that means you won't drop as many uniques. to get converted to the T1 currency. So that means that the Loot Goblin is essentially dead, because before in the past you were scaling your rarity to absurd levels, and that is what actually allowed you to get that many uniques that get converted over to the T1 currency or the highest level of scarabs. And you can see this all the time, like from the past, before you would get like 10, 15, 20 winged scarabs, and nowadays it's rare to get like 2 or 3 winged scarabs. And that's pretty much because of the current version no longer takes into account your player rarity bonus or the party quant rarity bonus. Now, the main thing with this is that we don't really know if this affects reliquary scarabs, because technically the reliquary scarab that makes it you find more unique items, technically this could still get affected by the conversion rate, because that should be a separate stat. And I have noticed since I started using reliquary scarabs that the Loot Goblins actually had more chances to get divine orbs than in the past. I don't know if it's just some fake data, but I haven't really done enough to really have a full conclusion. So if you actually figure that out, let me know down in the comments below if you realize that adding reliquary scarabs has actually increased the amount of divine orbs that you actually found. So right now, the only way to reliably farm apothecaries is to spam Enraged Strongbox Sextant. Now, it's a kind of a sad state of affairs, because the only way to get items in the game now is literally to kill monsters that have a lot of quant. However, GGG removed a lot of the quant and rarity from the Atlas tree, or from the monsters from the past league mechanics. So the only way to get monsters with a lot of quant is to use this sextant right here, which is Strongbox monsters are enraged and 500% increased item quantity. And most people are running some sort of wandering path for the Atlas setup, where they take all of these increased effective map modifiers, and then take all of these quantity and rarity nodes in the center with wandering path. And that's how you can get a map with around like 300% quant. So this is 233% quant, this map. And once you take a few of these altars, it can go all the way up to like 320% at the very high end. So now, instead of trying to kill monsters everywhere, we're only trying to kill monsters from the Strongbox. Now, another thing that is a pretty big thing is Headhunter can no longer fully carry builds due to the weakness of the average rare mod compared to the old Arch Nemesis. So before, in the past, like the Arch Nemesis mods used to have like 3 or 4 different things to it. Now this new rare mod is only 1 actual mod. So we're going to be getting like a quarter of the power from before. And a lot of times when you put on Headhunter, unless you're doing like Legion or Harbinger, you'll notice that you don't actually gain that much damage at all unless you get the Soul Eater buff. And this does mean that you have to try to find the balance between the amount of magic find you're running and getting your character to a strong enough level, because you can't just put on a belt and rely on the belt to reliably carry you through all content. In fact, Headhunter is so weak right now, I'm actually not even using a Headhunter, and I'm using a Bisco's Leash with the quantity implicit, because I do find Rampage and the extra amount of rarity you get to be better than the power level that Headhunter actually grants you currently. Now, there are kind of a new Loot Goblin that exists, and the new Loot Goblin is actually the Divine Orb altar from the Eater of Worlds influence. Now, if you get this altar, like I said early on in the map, like I did here, it is very possible that you get 30, 40 Divine Orbs in one map, especially if you get the currency duplication altar right after it. So when I misclicked that altar, I probably lost around 25 plus divines, as it was at the very start of the map. Now, in this league, I think I found 1 Divine Orb altar, and there's probably a lot of times I actually misclicked it or I just didn't read it. And in that Divine Orb altar, I actually found 21 divines, because I did get a currency duplication altar, and I did find that altar more than halfway through the map. Now, the bad part about these altars is that it's very possible you click it at the very end, like you find it at the very, very end of the map, and then you don't have any more Eldritch Minions, and you actually find 1 Divine Orb. You can find a lot of stories like that on Reddit. And there's another altar that's the final boss drops 2 to 4 Divine Orbs, and this does get scaled by Eldritch Gaze, so I think you can actually get like 6 Divine Orbs on the final boss, because this day has 50% increased effect of upsides. Now, I did end up finding a Loot Goblin. If you actually look at this picture right here, I found a mob that dropped 10 divines. Now, how is this actually possible, and what actually happened? So the way that they changed up the Loot Goblins is that they hid all of the reward conversions, so we don't really know exactly what monster had the reward conversions. In the past, if we saw that a mob was Lunar's Touch, we know that, oh, it had the conversion to currency. We saw that it was Brine King Touch, we know it was a Divination card one. Aberraph's Touch or Tukuhama's Touch, it was a conversion to maps. So now the reward conversions are hidden on the mob, but they do exist. If you do enough maps, you will notice that some mobs drop a lot of scarabs, some mobs drop a lot of maps. However, the problem is that the rarity bonus, as in the past, no longer apply. So even if you run rarity on your setup, you'll notice that you're no longer getting a bunch of winged scarabs, you're no longer getting a bunch of annuls, divines, and exalted orbs, unless you have these 1 in a million occurrences. Now, this means that the reward conversion is still affected by the rarity on the map, so even though it's not affected by your own player rarity, the amount of rarity on the map still matters a lot. So you can see right here, it's 165% rarity on the map. And you also have an inherent quantity and rarity of the mob. So every single mob has a different amount of quantity and rarity, and certain mobs like beasts, for instance, or certain mobs that have a lot of Arch Nemesis mods or a lot of rare mods. And it's also very possible that having the God Touched mod also makes it that the mob has a lot more inherent quantity and rarity. So in this instance, and I'll play the clip for you real fast, just to see what it looks like when you can find 10 divine orbs from a mob. So right here, I'm killing a mob, and I'm realizing, oh, I see this stuff coming out of the sky, trying to rain on my character's head with a golden shower or silver shower. You will see that, oh, I'm trying to kill the mob, and I had the divination distillate up, and I killed the mob, and 10 divine orbs drop. Now, I did have a duplication altar, and this is why this thing got duplicated, so it's also lucky that I found a currency duplication altar. But why did I get 10 divine orbs? If you notice in the clip right here, I was actually fighting a red beast. Now, red beast, I know, inherently has more quantity and rarity, and red beast actually doesn't even get affected by your culling, because Einhar is actually what kills it. So in this instance, you know that the rarity has no impact whatsoever, or your player rarity has no impact whatsoever on the mob that you killed. So in my eyes, this is pretty much a very lucky scenario because it's on a red beast and it's also on a God Touched, and this is pretty much similar to finding a God Touch within a God Touch. So not only did I find a God Touch that was a red beast, I also found a God Touch with a hidden reward conversion that converted everything to currency. And they guess there is still loot goblins in the game, but it's a very, very rare occurrence that is much rarer than ever before. Now, overall, I do think the Divine Orb Altars has accomplished the goal. I do think a lot of people do like the idea of being able to find a loot goblin, but they don't like the idea that they have to fully invest in the Magic Find and they have to call in a Magic Find caller. Now, reward conversions not being affected by player rarity has pretty much made rarity not a mandatory stat anymore for every build in the game. I'm pretty sure if we looked at PoE Ninja from last league or looked at what flask people were running, most people were probably running a gold flask because of the increased rarity you were getting. And I also think that a lot of people were probably also running Ventor's Gamble because it gave you so much rarity and quantity. Now, quantity is still the #1 stat in terms of finding player apothecary cards. If you look at my Magic Finder right here, I'm running as much quantity as possible. I have 20% quantity here, 15 plus 15, 30, 50% quantity there, 60% quantity here, 70% quantity here, and 12% quantity for 82% quant on this Kinetic Blast Magic Find Juggernaut. So it's all about trying to find the perfect balance between your clear speed and how much Magic Find gear you could run. Now, so you can see here, I could technically put on Gold Worm, but my damage all comes from my pair of boots. I could put on Greed's Embrace, but if I put on Greed's Embrace, I lose a bunch of damage from Iron Fortress. So it really just comes down to how much quantity and how much clear speed you're sacrificing for that quantity. And a lot of times once you get to the threshold where you're pretty much killing all of the mobs in one shot, then you know you could probably put a little bit more quantity on your gear because your map clear speed is not really getting affected by that much. And you also have to make sure your character's not dying all the time, because if you're dying all the time, then you are actually losing quantity because your maps are taking longer to clear on average. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this has explained how you can potentially find a loot goblin if you win the lottery, and what exactly they did to change it so that loot goblins are not as prevalent as before. But thanks for watching, everyone. Don't misclick the divine altars like I did, and I hope you find more mirrors and divines than me, and see you next time. Bye!